Welcome back, listeners, to Learning from Friends. My name is Cade, your tour guide on this lovely adventure that we get to have. Today, I'm recording in Marietta, next to a pond in Laurel Park. So it's very nice just to kind of be outside today, and hopefully it's not going to get too humid in the process for it, but you never know. We're going to enjoy it, and we're going to go through it. As you all know, before I go into the podcast, I always give my mom's quote of the day. Thank you, Mom, for continually sending me these every single day in order to kind of give me that extra boost of energy. Today's is an unknown author. We have no clue who wrote it, and I'm sure it's kind of a collaboration over the years, but it's beautiful work. Life is not about being rich, being popular, being highly educated, or being perfect. It's about being humble, kind, and real. Wonderful words, just wonderful words that's out there, and we can all learn a lot from that, whether you are a child or a 90-year-old plus, you can be able to learn from this. So, yeah, that's a wonderful words. Thank you, Mom, for sharing these with me. To start out with our podcast today, just to give listeners, if the content is a little rough today, more than it usually is, so if you feel a little uncomfortable, that is okay for you to stop right now. We're going to be discussing battles with drug addiction, sobriety, and a road to recovery. And so my guest today that I'm going to go ahead and introduce is Chris, who is a very eclectic, strong, and wonderful human being who's been very gracious with us today as he's going to share with us his battles with drug addiction, sobriety, and his road to recovery. There are many definitions for the word addiction that are out there, but the one that I think is the most suitable was published in this 2021 Medical News Today article written by Adam Feldman. It says, addiction is an inability to stop using a substance or engaging in a behavior, even though it is causing psychological and physical harm. A lot of people have the bad assumption saying that it's always substance. It's not. Having just a simple ability to not stop doing a habit over and over again, whether it's good or bad for you, it can be detrimental. That is an addiction that comes into it. And so that's just something to think about. Don't always judge something off of a stereotype or judge something off something that you have not done a little bit of research on. So I recommend always looking into it. And also with it, understand that there are three sides to a coin. That sounds weird. Three sides, like three sides, what? It is, you have heads, you have tails, and you also have that little ridge that's in that it can stand up on. So be understandable, be reflective of that for as we're going through this. So just something to think on. If this podcast is not for you, this may be a time to stop. If not, welcome to the adventures that we're about to take on. Chris, it's an honor to spend time with you today on this beautiful day that we have, and your willingness to speak on this topic that we're addressing today. Welcome to Learning from Friends.
I appreciate it, Cade, man. I appreciate you giving me the time and opportunity to talk about, these issues, and also giving, other people the platform in order to get their stories out. It's good work that you're doing. It's good work, man.
I appreciate those kind words. It really goes a long way. I struggle with self-confidence. I always am negative towards myself and always just self-critical. So always hearing it, thank you. It's a blessing to kind of have those words. Now, Chris, can you give us a visual picture to our listeners of who is Chris?
Whenever you sent me the questions, to give me a little insight into what we were going to be talking about today, I appreciate it. But this is one of the hardest questions that I always find. I find it very difficult. Like you said, it's the confidence to talk about yourself, to kind of hype yourself up. I don't know, man. I have kind of, like you said in the beginning, an eclectic mix of hobbies and interest. I'm really big into spirituality, religion, like mythology, kind of the stories that build up the mythos of these, different religions that people turn to kind of help them cope and deal with life. I enjoy art. I've been getting really big into like watercolors, oil painting, I'm looking to actually get into sculpting, doing marble sculpting soon.
Wow, that's an intense one right there.
There's a place called Cherry Lion down in Decatur, I think, somewhere, somewhere local. Cherry Lion. They do like marble sculpting and things like that, clay and whatnot. So I think I'm going to take a class doing that.
I've always been interested in like glass blowing. I don't know. It's just something that's always been something interesting.
There's a couple good places around where you can like pay to take a class for like $45. There was one up here in Marietta. I can't think of the name of it. But yeah, man, I'll send you if you're looking into
finding an escape, a hobby, something that is your creation, your joy, is very important to have. It really goes a long way.
Yeah, man. So yeah, I've been doing the art stuff. It's an outlet, like you said, a hobby, something that you can kind of turn to when shit gets rough. Everybody needs it. And like you brought up in the beginning, I'm also an addict, have been for a long time. I don't know if I necessarily want to say I wish I could change about myself, because it has brought me experiences which have made me the person I am today, and I'm thankful for those. But what the hell, man? It's been a
long road.
It's been a long road, long and bumpy road, man. But, it's day by day. You got to take it day by day.
There's a lot of misconceptions that people have out there when it comes to addiction. Do you have any things that you want to address of these misconceptions or stereotypes that are out there?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of them. I think the most common one that I've run into is people, seeing the issues and the struggles that you're going through, at least the physical aspect of it, whether it be, track marks or, you can tell, signs of drug addiction, and people seem to see it as a moral defect as opposed to either a coping mechanism. It's difficult when you're being judged, saying like you're a bad person or less than a person, or implied that, when a lot of people don't have the tools and resources in order to deal with these issues.
Exactly. And for so long, we overlooked the whole world and that sector of that it has a mental aspect for it. Mental health has been a huge deal in the last 20, 25 years. That's slowly starting to provide resources.
It's getting there, it seems. I think there's still a long way to go.
Oh, yes.
A long way. But yeah, over the past even 5-10 years, you can see a significant increase in, I guess, as a collective community, the attention that we are paying into that, because it's attention that needs to be paid.
Indeed.
And, it's something that has been needed to be expanded on. So I'm hopeful for the future regarding it. I don't see people just losing interest and dropping off, because it affects so much of our lives, and there's so much of the human psyche that we just don't know about. It's still so one of those great unknowns.
Yeah, that's very true, that we're discovering new things every day in the science community. And it's interesting looking at from like 1910s to 1970s, the slow advancement of technology.
Right.
In like the 80s, it starts picking up. And now we have like every year a new phone edition or a new update that changes it. And we have the world at our hands, and the technology that's available in the medical field is insane. And what's the new one around CRISPR, where they're trying to do modifications on DNA? That's scary,
right?
But it's stuff that's out there.
It's happening. Yeah.
But maybe the future's bright. I think the future's so bright I need sunglasses. I think that's like an 80s ska band. Like song. I can't think of the name of the band.
I wear my sunglasses.
That's a new one. That's a new one. This
okay.
goes back to like ska.
Okay.
It's ska in the 80s. I want to say early 90s. I can't think of the name of the band.
If you think of it, send me the link.
Yeah,
I'm always looking for new music, man.
It's a fun one. They were like a one-hit wonder kind of deal. But future's so bright. I need sunglasses. It's a cheesy 80s video too. It's so beautiful.
I'll try.
Could you tell us a little bit about your past drug use?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, how far do you want me to go back?
Wherever you're comfortable with, because this is your story, and if you feel uncomfortable at any moment,
okay,
we can ride it.
So, I guess, I started experimenting. I started late in high school, Boy Scouts, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, wild. Right. Yeah, just hanging out with friends. I think I got stressed out about a girl, which seems to be a reoccurring issue. And, smoked a little weed, felt better. And I think that's kind of where it started, man. Just these, the curiosity, adolescent curiosity. I don't know. I don't want to say it started with weed, because
A lot of people have the misconception that it's a gateway drug, but
yeah,
I don't think it is the gateway drug.
Yeah. I mean, that's, I guess, as what, whenever you go into like these AA meetings, they always say,
Hi, my name is blank.
Yeah.
I have this problem. Or
I kind of agree with you about, so I would smoke, daily or whatever, but I've never had an issue where like my job is being detrimentally, or my relationships are being detrimentally impacted by the marijuana use. So like I guess I'm California sober right now is what it's considered. Like I'll use marijuana, drink very rarely now. I might have like a beer with dinner or something. My drugs of choice, I try and stay away from, because those do detrimentally impact my job. Those do detrimentally impact my relationships. I know that smoking weed's not for everyone. Some people have that very addictive type personality where you just can't do anything. You gotta be cold turkey off everything. So I don't want to, knock anybody that has to go through that experience. You know what I mean?
Oh, indeed, because everybody's different.
Yeah.
There's no leaf or snow leaf is the same. It's same with humans. We're all different.
So for the actual, what I would consider the start of my addiction was probably in like late senior year of high school. There was veterinary anesthetic, ketamine, that they use for sedation, very numbing. I think that's where it started. That's when I started using hypodermic needles, because it's just a quicker. But yeah, that I did that for a while, messed a couple of relationships and jobs up because of it. But yeah, that's probably where that addictive behavior really started to show itself. It was about senior year.
So it's been about a decade and a half now with that kind of, since that started. Yeah, because we were 17, 15 years.
15, 16, 17 years, yeah, man. And, it comes and goes. Some days, some weeks, some years, it's good, and I'll be fine. And then, other weeks it's not, man. It's a struggle.
Oh, and entirely. Circumstances in our lives changes everything. Because I know whenever I had my incident with PTSD that started that route, I have my good days and I have my bad days that I struggle with. In my medications that I take help to be able to alleviate some of that pressures. But there are some points where it's just so overwhelming, and it's just so much in your life. And not every situation is the same. Not every way we interpret things are the same. Not every way we look at it. And some people are lucky that they have the support systems that are there. And some people are lucky that they also have these different people and supports in their life, and how they can be able to vocalize themselves in order to advocate for themselves, and that's hard. That's hard to be able to figure out where we're at in that kind of road. And that took me years before I even started seeking help for my PTSD issues that and I'm glad that you were able to find, you're starting to rehab at that one point in order to kind of like help find yourself back out. And so you said that you were having issues with kind of like there's circumstances that were happening in your life that kind of started this. You said it was kind of dealing with like, girls, and then like life surrounding stuff. Is that what other circumstances did I kind of miss that have kind of affected?
I mean, initially, I think I kind of used it just as an escape from everything. I didn't have healthy coping mechanisms, and it's only very recently that I've started with the art and, other hobbies, like you said, to kind of keep your mind interested. It's only very recently that I started with those. So like drugs were the only thing I knew whenever, any life situation would get bad, turn to drugs. It's kind of a running joke in the recovering community that when it's bad, you do drugs. When it's good, you do drugs to celebrate. It just turns into a vicious cycle, and that's the only kind of outlet that it becomes habitualized.
Gotcha.
Where you just kind of do it repetitively there. And it takes a lot of self-realization, I think, to kind of allow yourself to step out of that broken circle. It's
because it's a routine.
Yeah,
it
becomes a routine.
And we all have our routines that we like, that we're used to, and it's hard to get out of that in general.
Yeah.
Because if I have my little OCD tendencies, and I like to eat the same thing for breakfast every day. It's a very similar idea.
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
It is.
That I like to eat the same meal every day for breakfast, and I have to set my alarm 3 times every single time before I go to sleep. That is a repetition. That is an idea that if I don't have it, I don't feel comfortable. I feel like I've lost kind of what I'm looking at. And some people, like whenever I take my medication, if I don't take it for 2 days, I feel like I've dropped off the earth.
Right.
And it's a very similar idea. And so anybody that wants to say that it's, what they need to quit or they need to stop, it's hard for anybody. I ask you for a habit that you have, audience. Try that and see how it goes for you. It's not easy. What did you like most about the drugs when you took them?
It's like I said, it was more just a coping mechanism. Drugs are great for a time until they're not. And the line between having fun and experimenting, especially when you were using routes of ingestion that are very quick, that line between just having fun and experimentation and full-blown addiction is very fine. And I did not notice I had stepped over it until I was way far into it. Spent the last 12 years or so doing as a heroin addict. My drugs of choice were heroin and cocaine. I would do injections of one and back to another, and I wouldn't necessarily say that I enjoyed any aspects of it. I mean, the feelings, like I said, great for a time, but you got to pay the piper sometime. And that good feeling, that elevated feeling, you're going to come down eventually,
Yeah, that's hard. Just in general, I'm realizing that again, paying the piper, that any action may have a positive or negative reaction down the line for it. When do you think that you kind of realized that you had a problem? Because you said it kind of like came up on you. You didn't realize it at first, and it slowly kind of came in
very quickly. And I think this kind of goes back to that, the marijuana that we were talking about. I've never had a situation deteriorate quickly just from using weed. With the hard drugs, it's like hitting a brick wall very quickly. So probably the first time I really knew I had a problem was, I kind of ignored the calling out of work, going down on my lunch break to score some dope. Those I kind of just, it's like, it might be a little bit of an issue, but I can deal with this. When I realized I needed to get help, I overdosed in my bathroom.
Oh, that's extremely scary.
And I woke up with the needle in my arm. Thankfully, I was able to come out of it on my own because there was nobody else there.
Oh, my word.
I definitely woke up on the floor, needle still hanging out my arm. That was when I was like, okay, something, I need to do something, because what I'm doing is go kill me, And
that's a tough one to kind of come to those terms on it, especially scary whenever you could have passed right there. Because you have your family, you have your friends, and that's a hard thing to think about. A lot of people go, oh, the people you're leaving behind or something like this that kind of like guilt trip you into it. You don't know that state of mind that someone's in at that point. And as I mentioned earlier in podcast in an earlier episode, I had a point where I stepped off the edge and I lost it, and I attempted suicide on it, and I can't explain the state of mind that I was in. And you and with overdosing, I'm sure you can't explain like knowing where that line is, how far, whenever you've reached the point of your body's going to give up. As you said, paying the piper eventually. Like it's a scary thing. No.
I'm glad that you're still here, man, and that we're able
Same
to
with you.
reconnect. Because it's been, what, like 14 years
Yeah,
we were saying?
We met sophomore year in high school. We did CWF, which is Citizen Watch and Focus, through 4-H. And we hung out through 4-H.
Yeah,
we were kind of those oddballs that kind of like stuck out in a crowd. And
I gravitated towards you, man.
Exactly.
It's funny.
And yeah, it's amazing that these 14 years later, just kind of reconnecting back up. And that's the kind of the world, you never know what's going to happen.
Right,
that's been one of the biggest joys I can say for sure of going through and doing these. I've connected with people that I haven't seen in a long time and rekindling those friendships. So I'm glad you're still here.
I'm glad you're here, man. I'm proud of you for stepping out and doing this. It takes work and confidence. And at least for me, it'd be stepping out my comfort zone. You've always been very outgoing, energetic.
It's a coping mechanism for me because I'm nervous every time I do it.
Gosh, man. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this.
And I appreciate you again coming on with me. This is just, it's phenomenal. And I appreciate you continue to talk here on it because this is hard. This is deep. Now, what has been some of the hardest challenges of dealing with addiction over the years?
For me personally, I think the most difficult is the relapsing, because there's just so much kind of, I know this is touching on one of the
Oh no, keep going. I always catch up with it. I have an outline that I always follow by listeners in order to keep me in check. So if at some point, like when you're saying there, we move forward, which is fine. Okay. I always check off on it. So that is no big deal. Audience, welcome behind the curtain here. I opened up the kind of little bit of the curtain for you.
But yeah, man, it's the relapses. I've dealt with one relatively recently since, I'm being real with you here. These are podcast listeners are your friends, so they're my friends. I'm going to be 100%. I slipped up recently, and I think it's the guilt associated with it. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most difficult aspects for me. Like, I feel like I let myself down, especially I've had, up until this most recent one, like 2 years, year and a half, 2 years or something of sobriety. And
that's amazing.
And just to kind of watch that based on my own choices.
But you can do it again.
Yeah, exactly. I'm blessed that I'm able to, have this opportunity because, like I said, that first overdose, man, that could have been it. So everything after that is kind of like,
a gift.
Thank you. Yeah, a blessing, man. It's a blessing.
I have a friend that makes the comment, goes, I'm on borrowed time. It's just, whatever happens from here on out, I've made it.
Right.
And that's, we're in our 30s and there's a whole life ahead of us that we can be able to make a difference. And I'm hoping a listener on here can find that comforting and find that helpfulness and be able to step out and do something about it. That's the cool thing at the end of the day for it. Now, over the years, there always comes positive and negatives with drugs. What does the drugs cost you over the years? Not money, but everything else.
No, it's a lot of money. A lot of money. I won't even get into that. I feel, at least for me personally, the drugs, because I started especially so heavy, so young, that they kind of stunted my social development, is definitely impacted my relationship with my family, friends, acquaintances, or whatever. My parents have been very supportive.
And that goes a long way. That's amazing.
It's huge. I wouldn't have been able to do this without, my mom and dad being there for me when I slip up and helping me pick back up. And a lot of people don't have that.
That's true. A lot of those bridges get burned and they mistrust.
Yeah. And it's, if you got somebody that's struggling with addiction, just being there for them consistently can do a lot in terms of maybe not, getting them to change immediately, but that consistent, it sets the stage for the healing down the road. But it's difficult, because drug addicts, they're on some bullshit. I know I know I've done my share. I know from the other side, from my parents' perspective, my sister, my girlfriend, loved ones, that it is a trying experience, especially when it's repetitive or often. It's the patience. We just got to be more kind and patient with everybody.
That's true. You never know what's going on in someone's life.
A little bit more understanding. Yes, sir.
Yeah. That's a big gift. Patience and time. The best gift you can ever give someone is your time, because it's limited. And giving that and investing that time, sometimes I can't remember, it was a Scrubs episode. I think it's one of the wives is pregnant. And sometimes you just need to hear, yeah, that sucks. Or yeah, that's just sitting here sympathizing and just saying, yeah, that stinks. That stinks. You're not trying to force something on them. You're not trying to change them. You're listening. It's a huge, it's listening.
It makes a difference, man. It makes a difference.
Are there points where, like triggers that think, oh my gosh, I feel like this is going to cause me to potentially relapse or drop back to like depressive state?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. We were talking about this earlier. I'm just starting therapy today, actually, which is a huge step for me because I've been very resistant. I don't like talking. I don't like opening up to people, which is why
I'm proud of you for doing this podcast and seeking the therapy, man.
I appreciate it, man. It's, like I said, I realize that I need to do something different. So I'm giving this a try, stepping out of that comfort zone. I've been trying to identify triggers. I probably need to go talk to a psychiatrist and get on some medication. I've never been diagnosed, but I have very similar symptoms of like a bipolar type disorder, where I'll have these like very high ups and then I'll crash and be, depressive, and it kind of alternates. I've been trying to identify the triggers. I think stress has a lot to do with it, whether it be work, interrelationship stress.
Life is stressful for so many people with COVID. Yeah, it really has set us back in big ways and stepped us forward in some others. But the suicide rate jumped up close to 1.5 times over the COVID time period.
I believe it.
And there's also been so many more overdoses, and what was the other one that I was reading statistics about recently? Hospitalizations and rehab facilities have gone up tremendously, but as a result of it. Yeah. And because that's a hard thing, being alone with yourself or a few people, we're social creatures.
Right.
That's just the nature of it. And that's hard. Having gone through some of these issues, what do you recommend for someone that could be like a first step after you've concluded, hey, I have an addiction or I have a problem that I want to address?
I think it's going to be very situational. It really depends on, how good your support system already is. For me, like I said, I've had my parents, my girlfriend there for me through this, and the difference between trying to do that, I don't know if I'd be able to do it alone if I did not have that support system. So anybody that doesn't, shout out to them. That is a hell of a thing to do on your own. I think it's, like I said earlier, stepping out of your comfort zone, realizing that this circle that I'm walking in isn't the one that I need to be in, and kind of stepping off that track into something different, at least trying something different, with the hobbies, just anything to replace that habit until that good alternative becomes a habit itself.
The good endorphins, the good triggers in your brain that kind of fit that similar mode.
Right. So for me, I'm trying to, like I said, replace this coping mechanism that I use with drugs whenever I get stressed and turn it to art. It's a difficult transition, but with anything, I think it's just time and repetition until it becomes more normalized in my head.
I think they say the first 100 hours is the hardest to be able to complete of being able to make a habit. And then if you make it the first 100 hours, it is a lot more likely to stick. And it's 30 days, they say, to form a habit, but it's 2 to lose it.
Wow. I believe that.
That's one of those weird studies, and I like to read all different philosophies and psychology books, and that's one of the ones that constantly pops up. So besides like finding the art, what has been some stuff that has worked over the years? And do you have an idea of like why it helped you?
Honestly, I would do some unhealthy coping habits that would kind of maintain me, I think. When I wasn't using, I would like throw myself into work and just dedicate, all of my time into just working. And, that's
negative in another way.
Negative in another way, man. So it's something that I had to kind of step back from and realize, it wasn't working because that was just stressing me out to the point that I would just get more stress and bottle it up. And then I would have this huge, relapse where I would go on a bender for like 3 or 4 months and, lose the job, have to find, it's not viable. It's not a viable option for me.
When we were having some conversations earlier before coming over here, you really saying that you kind of gotten into some of the different readings of spirituality and stuff. Has that been something that's been extremely helpful for you to find a direction?
I think so. I've always been into the kind of spiritual stuff, especially learning about, the different religions. It's amazing how these stories they're very similar across vast time periods, vast distances. There's reoccurring themes that I've found, and I like kind of exploring those patterns within these different religions. Because I think Carl Jung, I think his book was The Collective Unconscious, spoke about these archetypes that we have as humans, these trickster figures, these old man elders, wise elders. There's also a lot of the dying and rising gods throughout history, whether it be Aztec, Hindu. I just find it interesting. It's an outlet for me that I like to kind of explore and kind of see the similarities and how everything links up, at a root with just humans in general.
That's true. It's controversial at times for saying, I think every religion has something right to bring to the table. Just because it's different doesn't always mean it's wrong. And it's important to, at the end of the day, it's the stories, it's the morals that's coming out of it that really make that big difference there. Right. It really does. And having something to relate to within that text that reaches to you, that's the goal of what it was supposed to do. That's what it was supposed to do, is reach you, to make you feel something, to grow from it. Exactly, so that's a huge thing. Now, over the years, what has not worked for you? I know you've mentioned that it kind of sort of worked with working, but at the same time, it was detrimental in another way.
Right. I have a bad issue. I don't know if you can relate to this with your experiences, but shutting down when things get, like mentally shutting down. Like I'm functioning, I'm going to work, I'm going to school, whatever, but I'm just not
going
there mentally. Exactly. Yeah. I've been trying to not do that because that is something that I've kind of fallen back into. Not necessarily fallen back into. It's something that I've done since I was very young with childhood trauma. Going back to kind of what you were saying about your OCD, your PTSD, and with addiction, I think it all kind of boils down to trauma in the end, and how, everybody's different, we're all different, and how that trauma kind of expresses itself in the individual. Like, we could have had the exact same experience at the exact same time. You came out with OCD, PTSD, and I came out with drug addiction. Everybody's different. And
it's true.
Yeah.
I think there was a study that proved there may be 100 people sitting in a room. A guy may run in through the door to the back, grab something, and then run out. And some people are going to say, oh, the guy was wearing a blue shirt. He's wearing a gray shirt. Oh, he was like 6 foot tall. No, he was like 4 foot tall. Because it's all perspectives. Everyone sees something differently, and every experience is something different. And I truly do believe in the idea that we all have a different chemical imbalance in our brains, and how our brains is processing things are all drastically different. So we have introverts, extroverts, it's no two snowflakes are the same. So you're 100% right on that.
Man. But yeah, so I've been trying not to shut down. I've been trying to be in the now. I don't know if you're into like some of the 60s counterculture books.
I love 1920s up to 1980s counterculture. I almost literally had a minor in that in college,
pretty cool,
in history. I was literally 2 classes short.
Oh man.
Foreign language is my weakness. I couldn't do it.
There's a book by Ram Dass called Be Here Now. I swear the dude wrote it on acid. It was on...
Highly plausible.
Yeah, it's very free-spirited, but there's some good, little tidbits in there, but, the title of it kind of sums up what the book's about, and it's be here now, be in the moment. And I know, at least for me, I don't want to speak for others, but it's a very difficult thing. I'm constantly thinking ahead with my anxiety or thinking back, with regrets and stuff. And I'm trying to kind of let all that go and just be now, be here, be present.
Strong words. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So and the literature and activities have put you kind of in that right direction. What have you learned about yourself over these years? Because I know they're saying be here right now, but you wouldn't be here without some of those past experience. What's something that you've learned about yourself over the years?
I don't know, man. Like I said, that self-confidence thing and the being able to give myself credit is difficult. So
we are our own worst critic.
We are our own worst critic, man. I mean, I do feel like I am kind. I know I have, slip ups, and I get in my emotions or in my feelings, and, I can just kind of be dismissive, but I go out of my way to try and not be. I try and treat people how I want to be treated. I'm not saying I'm perfect all the time, but it's something that I actually like about myself. I'm very honest.
Do unto others as you would want done to you.
I try and live by it, man. I try and live by it,
Yeah. Another, one of those cliche ones is don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, I try and live by that. I try and do good even when I'm feeling guilty about, the self-destruction with drugs. I still try and help other people out. Again, but we were talking about it earlier. You can't pour from an empty cup. It just drains you. It drains you more.
Yeah, we both have that issue of we help everybody else before we help ourselves at times. And as you said, it drains our cup. It could be a gift and a burden.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Like, I definitely enjoy doing it, but sometimes you got to know when to take a step back and kind of be a bit selfish, Yeah,
do something nice for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I just recently did a trip with one of my best friends. Episode 1, Chris Bias. We went up to Chicago and went to a wrestling event. And that was treating myself something nice.
Oh, yeah.
Over 2 summers ago, I went out of my comfort zone and went to DC. It's something nice for myself to kind of go, but you have to do that. And you feel guilty because you're like, oh my gosh, like I could be doing this time to this, or I could be doing something with that. You gotta take time for you because there's only one of you.
Exactly.
It really is.
Be in the moment, be present, treat yourself.
Be here now. Yeah, treat yourself. Parks and Rec, right? I love Parks and Rec. Great TV show. Now, what is life like for you today? Like, what are you up to today?
Today I'm taking it one step at a time. I think as I've gotten older, I've kind of gotten a better understanding of myself and what I need to do. Right now I'm just trying to find something that works because what I was doing before wasn't working. So like I said, I'm trying this therapy. I'm trying to step out of my comfort zone, and grow and heal. I'm trying to learn to be human is what it is, man.
If you figure out what it's like to be a human, let us know. Because that's a forever answer. It's kind of like, what's the secret to life? Or what's the meaning to life? Yeah. What was the book? A Hitchhiker's Guide Across the Galaxy, 42. Man. That's the answer, but what's the question? No, that's a true thing. Trying to find ourselves. I know you're going to find it.
I know you will. It, man.
I look forward to seeing kind of that path going on. For that year and a half that you said that was a long time that you were able to have a very strong sobriety, what do you think helped you maintain that for that period of time?
Honestly, the year and a half that I was sober, I was going through some sort of some sort of mental health issue with the stress, with COVID, like we were talking about, that constant stress. So I was out, kind of living homeless, basically. I was kind of living out my car, going to these different. So I don't know if that's like a sobriety number that I want to like tack on my shoulder. You know what I mean? Because I was going through some other stuff at the time. I didn't have the money to do drugs. I don't know if I would have had I had the money, but I think that was the kind of driving factor in that.
Is that when you went from park to parks across the West Coast?
Across the West
That
Coast,
is
man.
phenomenal going through and seeing those little areas, even though it may have been a struggling time. It's something you can look back and be like, yeah, well, I went there and I saw this. So you're like, a buffalo. I saw a buffalo. Like, I saw like cows that were coming from all over the place. They were herding. I had to wait like 5-10 minutes just for them to get across. That's something you can look at and be like, wow, the world is so massively different out there. Like, it creates a little bit of culture for you.
It is, man. I'd never been out that way before, really. So yeah, I traveled all over, really Midwest United States, Utah, Colorado. I met some, really cool people in all the states. I would go to, I'm not Mormon, but I was in Utah, so I was like, I feel like going to a church. So I'd go to these Mormon churches and these rural communities and stuff, and just, to kind of get that social aspect of it. Like you were saying earlier, we're social creatures. We need that social. So I would try and kind of just expand my horizons. I was already in a bad situation, so I was like, what, why not, get a little experience? And I met a lot of cool people.
Going out of your comfort zone.
Going out of the comfort zone.
I recommend to anybody, go and witness different churches, different places, because you never know, there's something you could take away or something you can learn from and meet. Because I have met so many amazing people from visiting these different places of worship that I may have never ever thought of. And it opens up your eyes too, because sometimes we have these terrible stereotypes of people that we don't know and we don't understand. And if you, as they say, walk a mile in their shoes, even if it's just 10 feet or something like that, you may open up your eyes a little more. Stepping beyond the ideas of addiction here, what goal do you think like humanity is not focused on enough?
This is another one that I looked at that I really had to think on, man. In the current political and social economic environment that we're in, there's a lot of issues, but I think collectively as a whole, we are at least beginning to kind of acknowledge these issues, which I think is a very good first start. There's a lot of work to be done.
Yes, there is.
In a lot of different areas. But I don't know, this younger generation, I'm hopeful because they seem to see these areas that we're kind of detrimental in and be willing to voice that they're not okay with it. I think, not necessarily our generation, but, going back a little bit, everybody's kind of gone along with the crowd. And I think there's been a large jump in the respect for kind of individuality and letting, that individual spirit kind of shine through. So like you said, I'm hopeful for the future. It's bright. There's a lot of areas that we need to work on, but, I think hopefully things are changing for the better. I'm definitely hopeful.
I agree. It's because there's a lot more awareness brought to it too. Whenever you see in the news that they have, it's being in the news, it's getting the newspapers, it's getting traction within social media as well. That we're seeing it firsthand. We're seeing it place. When you had, say, in the 60s and 70s, you did have Vietnam being shown on TV firsthand, and you were seeing the protest, but it's not in the same fire that is spreading. Today, whenever you see movements like the LGBTQ protest of looking for more rights, with the Black Lives Matters movement as it grows, and then the Me Too movement is seeing more attention being brought to it and a lot more consequences as a result too, for people that have done stuff in the past to it. That's really kind of made a difference. And I think going forward, that's going to help out to create a better future. Now, there is some negatives to that because social media can cause you to be entrenched in a alternative world.
Yeah.
that necessarily you get your news that you want to filter for you.
Right.
Or you get into these places that you're following some knowledge that may not be fully developed. It just, yes, it's an opinion, it's there, but it may not have the full backing, and you can fall into traps. So there's good and bad to all of this.
Right.
But I really think that we are, agreed, moving in a very
In a
good direction
positive
for it.
direction, I agree, man.
Is there any last minute things I have not brought up that you would just like to discuss, words of wisdoms, a little side rant that we can go on for a little bit?
I don't know, man. You know, if any of your listeners out there are struggling with drug addiction, I very much encourage you to get help. You know, at least try. If you don't have anybody to reach out to, man, you know, if you want to give my email or something, reach out to me. I'd be more than willing to give you whatever resources I have.
What email would that be?
That would be wmchrisneal@yahoo.com. You know, depending on what your issue is, you know, everybody's different. You really got to find what works for you, whether that's like a methadone clinic or whether it's AA, NA, art therapy, just something, man. Just if you're struggling with something, you know, do it. I know it's hard at times to do it for yourself, especially when you get in these downward cycles or in a bad, you know, dark spot. But it's, you know, if anybody needs anybody to talk to, just hit up that email, man. I check it fairly often.
That's amazing that you're offering yourself up there for that. And for some people, they don't have that. So thank you for adding that in there. And thank you for sharing your time with us today. This has been phenomenal. It's been eye-opening for me. It's been amazing to reconnect over breakfast and now here. And I hope this is rekindling that relationship that we had through 4-H. Thank you, 4-H, for kind of bringing that together for us many years ago.
Shout out to 4-H, man. That was definitely a fun time. I definitely hope it does. It's been a while. I've missed you, man. I've missed you.
Missed you as well. So as you listeners all know, you can reach out to me at cade, which is spelled CADE, at learningfromfriends.com. I am on Twitter, which you can search Learning from Friends Podcast. I'm on Facebook as well, Learning from Friends Podcast. I typically do not allow comments on any of the platforms that I'm on, just because people can be really mean, but people can be very nice too. So if you want to make a comment to me, positive or negative, send me an email. I'd be glad to sit back and read it and respond back, and we can have a conversation that way. If you would really like to, you can contribute to my Patreon page, which can be searched under Learning from Friends. I don't have any levels or special things to be able to contribute. I teach, I do the podcast. I am a one-man band to be able to do all the editing and everything. So just $1 or $2 a month would be deeply appreciated. Please like, subscribe, let your friends know, let your dog know, let your cat know, share it with, your neighbors, because I think this is very good for everyone as a whole that's out there. There's a little bit for everything. And maybe every episode's good for you. Maybe every episode's not. Maybe you can find one or two in there. Pick and choose. That's why I try to give as much as I can in the description. And as you all know, before we leave out, my name is Cade Curtis, your tour guide from Learning from Friends. And most of all, don't forget to let your curiosity fly high.